I have a large garden which gives me the luxury of space to grow crops that take up quite a bit of area, that ramble, and also to experiment with things that are a little bit on the edge and not necessarily going to produce that well. But I know for many people they don't have that luxury of space and only have very confined and limited areas in which to grow their plants. Now, I've often wondered what plants I would choose if I was in that situation and only had limited space. And so it's interesting to put some thought to that. So what I wanted to do today was to go over 5 plants that would be my first choices to grow in a summer garden, principally in a smaller space. Now, I'm not particularly focusing on plants that would grow in containers, though some of these could be grown in containers, but mostly thinking about a small garden of 1 or 2 raised beds. Now, my first choice would be to grow a tomato. Now, I know some people are going to say that's a fruit and not a vegetable. There are many things that we grow in a so-called vegetable garden that are fruits, but we won't go into those technicalities. The beauty of a tomato, as you see here, it's able to be trained to grow using the vertical space. And so you're not using the area, but you're going up. And that really allows you to put a lot more into a smaller garden. So here you'll see my habit with this tomato, which is growing in the greenhouse. I have actually pruned a lot of the leaf off to actually allow a better airflow through and reduce disease. It only really needs these top leaves that are the growing leaves. These others, which on this particular variety would be quite bushy, can be removed. When I grow it outside, I don't necessarily do that because there is more airflow, and you'll see it's quite a bushy plant. But here it's growing quite quickly and I've removed those leaves. I'm using 3 to 4 stems rather than 1, which is quite common, and it's producing quite well on it. In a hotter climate you may choose a cherry tomato or cherry type tomato. An example here of these Gardener's Delight, which is a really nice tomato.
Yeah.
But I've not pruned this, and that's why it is so bulky. In a smaller space you would want to prune it because it is a rambling, indeterminate tomato that is really going to spread. So that's my number 1 choice. My second choice is a climbing bean. Now, many of us are used to the bush beans that we have to bend over to pick. Really, a climbing bean to me is so much better because I'm able to pick this standing up. I'm able to see the crop when it's ready to harvest without any problems. It's up off the ground, away from disease issues, and it again is using, like the tomato, that vertical space and not spreading around the ground and using up my ground's growing space. So I've talked about this particular variety in the past. It's a Blue Lake, and I really like it because it's a stringless bean and it tastes really good. So that's my second choice. The third plant that I would choose for a small garden is a zucchini. Now, yes, they can take up a little bit of space. Some varieties do like to run, but if you choose some of the more modern varieties that grow very compact like this one, which I think is blackjack, you'll find that it doesn't really take up a lot of space. And in terms of the amount of production that you can get from a zucchini, I think they're a really great choice. If you pick regularly, you should get a zucchini around about this size every day during the peak of the season, and that's quite a lot of zucchinis to eat. So you really only do need generally the 1 plant. I've got a lot more. I've got 3, which produces far too many zucchinis for us to consume, and we have to give them away, and many people run into that situation. So if you can just grow 1, it will give you probably enough zucchinis for your family. But I think a really great choice for the summer garden, and really because of that high productivity. The 4th plant that I would grow is a carrot. The beauty of carrots is that you can grow them quite densely and you can produce quite a lot of carrots in a fairly small space. They do take a longer period than some other crops, but they also will last for a longer time. So they, in the right climates, they can stay in the ground and be harvested progressively. This variety is Nantes, and I've found that a really good variety for quick production, and I've still found that it keeps okay into winter. So really easy vegetable to grow and will produce quite well. Using the space that you have, you'll get quite a good crop from it. The fifth and final vegetable that I would be looking to grow in a small garden is a green vegetable. Now, lettuce is a very popular vegetable to grow, and if you've got the space, I would certainly do that too. But considering the concept of getting good nutrition for the amount of space that you're using, I would look for a more intense green. And from my observation, watching animals and birds eat gardens, I've always found that lettuce is one of the last things that they consume. They will go for a brassica first, and out of the brassicas, I think kale, in terms of a leafy green, is one of the best. My favourite kale is Red Russian, which is this one growing here. Now, we have cabbage white butterfly here, so I do have to keep it netted to keep the grubs off it. That's the simplest way of doing that. I found that with this Red Russian kale, you can use it both in salads and in cooking, so it is quite versatile, and it gives you really high nutrition for the amount of space that you're using. Now, you really don't need this quantity. I feed some to poultry as well because this produces quite a lot. You would only need to use probably 2 or 3 plants depending on your consumption. And one of the beautiful things I've found about this kale is that you only really need to plant it once a year. I plant it in spring and harvest all year from the same plants. It will grow taller and taller, but it will continue to produce. There's 5 plants that you can grow in a small garden and that really wouldn't take a lot of space to produce a range of production across summer. Remember, of course, that that's the 5 that I would choose. You need to choose plants that you like to eat. Don't grow things that you don't eat. Don't try and overproduce one plant, but try and create a balance. And try and use the ground that you have efficiently and maximize vertical growth, because you've got plenty of space up there and less to spread out.